Picture this, the exact heart-stopping moment when I, Marcus Hale, froze solid right there in my sun-drenched driveway, the kind of midday heat that shimmers off the blacktop like a mirage in a desert, making everything feel just a little unreal. My hands, rough and calloused from decades of gripping pliers, stripping wires, and climbing ladders into dusty attics, still dusted with the fine. Now trembling not from fatigue, but from a raw, building rage as I tore open that deceptively ordinary envelope from the utility company, only to be hit square in the chest by a staggering $5,000 electric bill that leaped out at me like an accusation, every line item bloated beyond belief, my pulse hammering in my ears like a faulty circuit breaker tripping over and over. Because in that sweltering instant, with sweat trickling down my back and my work boots planted firmly on the cracked concrete, I promised myself I'd patch up one of these weekends, but never got around to. Amid the endless grind of single dad life, I knew deep in my gut, with the certainty of a man who's spent his career tracing invisible currents through walls, that this wasn't some innocent billing glitch or a misread meter. No, this was a deliberate, calculated sabotage from the Willow Creek Association, those self-appointed czars of our impeccably groomed suburb who masqueraded as crossed hot and neutral wires sparking dangerously. For here I was, a third-generation electrician with 30 hard-earned years in the trade, the reliable soul who'd personally installed or repaired the electrical systems in half the houses of Maplewood Heights, ensuring lights stayed on, appliances hummed safely, and families slept without fear of fires or failures. Now glaring at this piece of paper that falsely claimed I'd burned through power like an industrial forge, when in reality, I'd been obsessively conservative, flipping off every light switch like it was a ritual to ward off evil, every saved kilowatt hour a precious deposit into the fund for my daughter Lily's college dreams. And as that truth sank in, the metallic tang of fury coating my mouth like I'd bitten down on copper, the distant hiss of the neighbor's automated sprinklers activating across the street, those perfectly timed jets watering emerald lawns maintained with our shared HOA dues, while some unseen could drive a man like me to bankruptcy, a man who literally held the blueprint to the neighborhood's power grid in his head. Well, they'd just ignited a war they couldn't possibly win, a conflict where I'd be the one pulling the plug, leaving them flailing in the shadows, begging for the light to draw you fully into this saga, the kind that unfolds like a slow-burning fuse leading to an explosive payoff. I need to paint a clearer portrait of who I am, because every epic revenge tale starts with its protagonist's backstory, and mine is woven from the threads of family legacy, personal tragedy, and unyielding grit. I'm Marcus Hale, 52 years old, but carrying the weight of 60 in my joints from countless hours crouched in crawl spaces or balanced on precarious ladders. A man whose life has been defined by the hum of electricity since childhood, my grandfather kicking it off in the gritty post-war era, a pioneer who brought light to remote farms and small towns with nothing but determination, a truck full of coils, and stories of blackouts turned to brilliance that he shared with my father over campfires on long jobs, my dad taking up the mantle. A stern but fair teacher who pulled me into the van at 16, handing me my first pair of lineman's gloves and lecturing me on the dangers of complacency. Son, electricity doesn't forgive mistakes. Crumpling metal and shattering glass in a cacophony that still echoes in my nightmares, leaving me a shattered widower in a sterile hospital waiting room reeking of antiseptic and stale coffee. The doctor's words, "I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do," ringing like a death knell, the insurance settlement arriving later as cold comfort, every dollar feeling tainted, like profiting from rain pattering on umbrellas as I whispered promises to her memory, vowing that our daughter Lily, now 17, with her mother's fiery intelligence and compassionate heart, would have the world at her feet, opportunities Elena had sacrificed for in her own cut-short life, which meant packing up our cluttered urban apartment, cashing in what we had, and moving to Maplewood Heights. Sustainable energy systems, sketching solar panel arrays in her notebooks while I worked late, believing we'd finally wired a brighter future. Yet, as with any circuit, hidden faults can lurk beneath. A formidable woman in her mid-50s with sharp features framed by impeccably styled silver hair, exuding the confidence of someone who'd climbed corporate ladders before retiring to this role. Patrolling the neighborhood in her luxurious black SUV with those vanity plates, a saw queen that she probably laughed about over wine with her inner circle, ruling from her sprawling Victorian mansion. Residence with the vigilance of a hawk, her daily routines including measuring neighbors' hedges with a stainless steel ruler as if deviations were personal affronts, her greetings delivered with a polished smile that masked the steel beneath, turning hello into something closer to a subpoena for those who dared question her. And in the beginning, those first few months after our move, advanced calculus with the focus of a future innovator, but the first fissure appeared amid whispers of local break-ins, prompting me to mount a simple, unobtrusive security camera above our front door, a basic model with motion detection to watch over Lily during my frequent late-night emergency calls to flickering homes or storm-damaged lines, only to receive a prompt citation delivered by certified mail, a $200 fine for unauthorized exterior modifications that compromise architectural uniformity, a charge that stung like a live wire to bare skin, especially since I'd devoted hours to reading the association's 956-page covenant document, every dense paragraph, every footnote, because safeguarding my family meant leaving no stone unturned, and discovered clear exemptions for knocking with the firm rap of a man used to dealing with skeptical clients, stepping into a foyer that sparkled with polished marble floors reflecting the crystal chandelier above, the space scented with an expensive floral blend that did little to warm the chilled atmosphere, explaining my case with the measured tone of someone who's calmed panicked homeowners during blackouts. That the board reserves interpretive discretion on all matters, her voice smooth but edged with dismissal, as if I were a mere subcontractor daring to question the architect's vision, sending me away with the distinct feeling that reason had no place in her domain. And from that day forward, the onslaught began in earnest, a calculated campaign I later dubbed Death by 1,000. Kid her age should have to ask, forcing me to paste on a brave front, assuring her it was just grown-up stuff, while inside, the injustice festered like corrosion on a terminal, eroding the peace I'd fought so hard to establish, transforming our fresh start into a minefield where every interaction with the association felt like stepping on a live wire. The true escalation, the point where subtle torment morphed into outright hostility, thundered in on that pivotal Tuesday morning, a day that dawned with deceptive calm, the air crisp and invigorating, carrying the faint bloom of neighborhood jasmine from the communal gardens, Lily in our sunny kitchen whisking eggs with her characteristic enthusiasm, the sizzle of butter in the pan filling the space with a comforting warmth. Days or face a property lien, with penalties already accruing like interest on a debt I didn't know, the timing impeccably cruel, disrupting Lily's morning routine as she grabbed her backpack for school, her eyes widening at the official tone drifting in, and through the lace curtains of the kitchen window, I glimpsed Victoria standing at her own vantage point 3 houses down. Triumph that made my fists clench involuntarily, and in that charged, visceral moment, my electrician's instincts fired on all cylinders, recalling my father's timeless advice from those sweltering. Improperly documented, bypassing the required 60-day written notice to homeowners and the mandatory majority vote for fee increases, emergency provisions twisted and abused for what appeared to be non-emergent expenses, perhaps even personal ones, and delving deeper into the clubhouse's electrical usage reports for the past year, the figures shouted fraud louder than a blaring smoke alarm. Meeting the kind of discrepancy that no honest electrician could ignore, setting my blood pressure soaring like an unchecked surge. That alarming find propelled me to reach out for reinforcements. And late-night cram sessions under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. Him now a seasoned meter reader for the local utility company, the guy who'd helped me track down elusive power thieves on jobs past, like that time a contractor tried to hide an unauthorized subpanel, and we met that evening in the parking lot of the local hardware store, the air rich with the invigorating smell of fresh-cut lumber and oiled tools that always cleared my head, Alex poring over the printouts with a furrowed brow, whispering in a low voice laced with disbelief, "These numbers are insane. Marcus, like the clubhouse is running a secret factory, not hosting potlucks." and we agreed to a clandestine inspection that night, approaching the building under the cover of suburban darkness, behind the decorative hedges to reveal a scene that turned my stomach as both a professional and a homeowner. Jerry-rigged jumper cables clumsily bypassing the main meter, diverting power directly to an external load with workmanship so dangerously amateur it could have sparked a catastrophic fire at any moment. Exposed wires frayed and taped haphazardly, the meter itself tampered with magnets, or his voice dropping to a hush. This is felony territory, brother, stealing power and billing the neighborhood for it. And as the puzzle pieces locked into place with an almost audible, my pocket with an anonymous text, "Pay up or lose your house. You have 9 days left." The words glowing on the screen like a threat from the shadows. But instead of fear gripping me, a dark, satisfying grin spread across my face, because in her attempt to intimidate, she'd just confirmed her guilt, and I, the man who dedicated his life to making sure power flowed fairly and safely, was about to reroute it straight back at her, turning her own tools of destruction against her in a masterclass of poetic justice. The tension ratcheted up from there, building like voltage in A, overflowing with screwdrivers and wire strippers, the air thick with the familiar blend of metal shavings, electrical tape adhesive, and the faint ozone from recent tests, me fine-tuning a relay for an upcoming job when the doorbell rang with the insistent urgency of someone on a mission, peering through the peephole to spot Tom Novak, the city inspector, clipboard in hand like a badge of office, his face wearing the uncomfortable expression of a man who'd rather be anywhere else, sweat beading on his forehead despite the mild morning chill, muttering apologies for the 3 complaints filed just yesterday about commercial vehicle storage and unauthorized business operations at your residence. The timing a masterstroke of psychological warfare, aligning perfectly with whose kitchen I'd completely rewired 18 months ago while she was halfway across the country caring for her dying father in a hospice facility, and James Donovan, currently bedridden after hip replacement surgery and floating on a cocktail of painkillers that made signing his own name a Herculean task, their marks suspiciously crisp and identical in style, screaming forgery to anyone with eyes, and as if scripted, Victoria materialized at my gate with the timing of someone who'd been watching my schedule, her ever-present clipboard clutched like a shield, voice dripping with false solicitude as she called out, "Inspector Novak, I do hope you'll be comprehensive. We simply cannot permit commercial encroachments to undermine our residential character, but rules were rules. Bureaucrat, this is all residential standard, Mrs. Langford. Unless Mr. Hale starts mass-producing here, it's perfectly legal." Watching her poise crack just a fraction, like insulation fraying under strain, her desperate pivot to potential insurance voids crumbling under the facts I'd researched years ago, policies explicitly protecting home workshops for personal use as long as hazardous materials weren't involved, and as Tom drove away with his spotless report in hand, I sat in my workshop, the scent of oiled tools grounding me, realizing this was no random harassment but a counterattacking required strategy, so I requested detailed meter histories from Alex spanning 2 years back, the data revealing patterns that defied logic, unexplained surges, drains that violated basic physics for a community center, and then the foreclosure notice landed like a bombshell, served right in the middle of Lily's virtual interview with Riverside Tech's engineering program. Her voice projecting confidence while her eyes betrayed the fear as the process server shoved the papers into my hands, declaring an emergency board meeting had voted to lien my property for accumulated violations totaling $14,000, signatures yet again from absent Susan and medicated James, the figures ballooned through late fees, administrative penalties, and emergency assessments. Optimism, locking herself in her room to sob over calculus problems, that heartbreaking sight of my talented daughter's aspirations jeopardized by one woman's avarice hardened my resolve like his late wife Sophia, a founding member who'd meticulously archived every HOA meeting, transaction, and policy change for 15 years in their home office, climate-controlled like a museum vault. Sophia was thorough, he said, easing into my kitchen chair with the care of fragile bones, producing bank statements that mapped $142,000 siphoned from association accounts to Langford Creations, LLC, masked as community outlays. Pool upkeep never performed, landscaping contracts never fulfilled, legal consultations never sought, and the devastating finale, Sophia's photographs of illicit electrical ties snaking from the clubhouse to Victoria's garage workshop, meter tampering blatant. Her final documentation completed weeks before her heart attack, including notes of a private confrontation where she'd threatened exposure, Edward's voice thickening with regret. She was going to blow it all open at the next meeting, but then she was gone, and I was too broken to fight. I felt a profound shift, this transcending my personal grievance, becoming a crusade for every defrauded family, justice for Sophia and the community she'd loved. But the ultimate revelation lurked. In a shoebox beneath Sophia's bed, swathed in tissue like a cherished heirloom, Edward phoning me at midnight, his voice quavering with fresh discovery and suppressed fury. "Come over now," Sophia hit. "Something that blows this wide open." And I arrived to find him in his kitchen amid a sea of documents, the air stale with cold coffee, and the sharp tang of old paper mixed with unresolved justice. Non-existent. The center shuttered for renovations, signatures from the dead and departed, her theft sprawling to street lamps, pool pumps, even emergency fire systems, calculations tallying 6 years. A fraud affecting 912 families, over $350,000 when including embezzlement, clippings of mysterious board member deaths and abrupt exits, 3 treasurers succumbing to heart attacks. Victimized soul, honoring Sophia's legacy by dismantling the empire she'd nearly exposed. We converted my workshop into command central, dawn light filtering through the windows as coffee percolated. Amid the clutter of multimeters and wire spools, Lily transforming my workbench into a digital fortress with her laptop, cross-referencing fraud patterns with the precision of a future engineer. Categories: financial crimes with $142,000 in embezzlement disguised as retreats and maintenance, utility fraud with industrial kills drawing factory power on residential rates without permits, election violations making Victoria's rule a sham, racketeering conspiracy binding it all, each pillar interlocking like a robust grid, bank trails salacious, Laura noting mail frauds 20-year. Sentences per count, my load calcs demonstrating kiln consumption's dangers, Lily's online detective work uncovering Victoria's Instagram empire boasting equipment costing tens of thousands. At the community meeting with authorities as witnesses, force public confession and full restitution or unleash prosecutors, because while prison removed her, facing shame neighbors was true. Punishment, community healing over individual ruin. Her desperation peaked like a failing system. Monday's cease and desist from multiple firms, Lily spotting social meltdowns admitting operations. Bribing Edward with shaking cash bundles, her PI's questions uniting victims in shared stories, tire slashing on camera escalating to felony, utility accusations ironic, mass email backfiring into. Laura projecting embezzlement, Edward sham votes, me utility hacks, and $102,000 theft, Victoria erupting, admitting under duress, signing $248,000 restitution, empire shorted. 8 months on. Assets auctioned for refunds, studio a garden, Susan leading transparently, values rising, my business exploding, Lily at Riverside Tech, story viral, reforms enacted, Sophia scholarships. Overreach, exposing risks worth it, or silence the crime. Your take?